Let's be honest, indie games crash and burn every year. Hyped promises, big ideas, and then nothing. But every once in a while, something shows up that makes you stop scrolling and think, wait, is this actually real? That's Beta Decay, a cyberpunk RPG being built by just one developer, and it looks like it's trying to outdo games made by entire studios. Shipbuilding with actual wiring systems, full mech combat, permadeath clones, and even a living economy. This isn't just another early access dream. This could be the most ambitious indie project ever attempted. Big studios usually spend half a decade and hundreds of people making a single blockbuster RPG. Teams of specialists handle everything from environment art to physics engines, while millions of dollars back each step. Now imagine stripping all that down to just one person sitting at a desk, coding, testing, and designing alone. That's the challenge fueling Beta Decay. One solo creator is daring to aim at the exact same scale of games that normally come from companies the size of small cities. The big question is obvious: how is that even possible? How can one mind compete with hundreds working in sync? That tension is what makes this project feel so fascinating. The developer behind it doesn't appear to be interested in chasing something safe or manageable. Instead, his vision points straight at the impossible. With Beta Decay, he wants players stepping into a sprawling cyberpunk world built not just for shooting or storytelling, but for complete interaction with the systems inside it. This isn't about throwing together flashy environments, it's about building a place that responds, breaks apart, and rebuilds itself under player control. He isn't just crafting scenes, he is building an entire framework for play. A core part of that framework is the voxel system. If you've seen games where blocks are used for destruction or construction, you already know half the story. In Beta Decay, this system isn't just about smashing things apart. It doubles as the foundation for player creativity. You can rewire power lines, layer walls, or tear open a room in combat, and the same engine tracks it all. That makes every single corner of the world feel less like scenery and more like potential. Destruction is a tool, but so is restoration. The choice between the two sits in your hands. Overlay that with a cyberpunk skeptic, and it gets even more intriguing. The world isn't designed as clean corridors with shiny chrome. It feels messy, industrial, worn out. Buildings carry the sense of a place lived in, and every interaction sends ripples across the space. A city block isn't just a backdrop, it becomes an environment you might dismantle piece by piece or fortify until it stands like your personal stronghold. That reactive quality is rare even in big budget releases, and here it's being pulled off by a single developer. To see why this matters, think about how many indie titles push scale too far and collapse.
Projects with big promises often end up as empty shells, struggling with bland gameplay or unfinished worlds. But Beta Decay leans into systems that already look grounded and functional. That's what sets it apart from cautionary tales. History shows it can be done. Take Stardew Valley. One developer poured years into it, with critics doubting anyone could reinvent the farming genre alone. Yet, it became a global success. That underdog story makes Beta Decay feel more like a daring attempt than a hopeless gamble. It carries the same spark, but aims much higher. This isn't a pie-in-the-sky dream floating around on concept art. From early footage, you can see real environments being torn apart, rewired, and rebuilt. That makes it easier to believe that players might not just test this game, but actually live inside it.
What happens when every mechanic you ever wished for in an RPG shows up in the same game? Most role-playing games focus on one big thing. Some pour effort into combat, while others lean into storytelling or exploration. Very rarely do you see a title attempt to make every system run deep, and that's what makes Beta Decay stand out. Instead of picking one direction, this project seems to say, why not all of them? Take ship construction. It's not just about snapping together hull pieces. You're wiring up actual electrical systems. Power doesn't flow automatically. You decide how current gets routed through conduits and breakers. A careless setup might leave a wing unpowered in a fight, shutting down engines or weapons mid-battle. You're not just decorating a ship, you're engineering it, like a puzzle, where physics and electronics actually matter. That complexity carries over to the people on board. Keeping a crew alive means watching over oxygen levels, energy use, and the internal networks that control everything from doors to life support. If a reactor overheats or a circuit fails, the risk isn't just wasted parts, your crew could suffocate or starve. Crew survival isn't handed to you, it's a constant balancing act. And once the shooting starts, the game doesn't fall back on ordinary point-and-click combat. Ballistics here respect physics in ways many shooters barely touch. Bullets aren't magic rays that hit instantly. They drop with distance, curve under gravity, and ricochet off surfaces depending on angle and speed. A firefight feels like a problem of trajectory and timing instead of just aiming at a health bar.
If guns aren't enough, step inside a mech. We're not talking about pressing 2 buttons for light attack and heavy attack. You get a cockpit with actual instruments, switches, weapon systems, countermeasures, and energy controls. Launching one into battle means flipping the right controls, firing off flares to evade targeting, and managing heat so your weapons don't fry themselves mid-fight. Every battle feels like running a machine, not just piloting a vehicle. That mechanical depth doesn't end when combat is over. Your character still has to eat, sleep, and manage the wear and tear of survival. Strange anomalies dot the environment, requiring caution as much as curiosity. Resources must be gathered, rationed, and sometimes gambled away in dangerous conditions. Survival is never background noise. It's woven directly into how long you last in this world. And if you die, death really is permanent, but with a strange twist. Clone insurance lets you carry continuity forward by restoring your character through stored genetic backups. Unlike standard respawn systems, losing a body has weight, but your identity persists with whatever upgrades or losses you've carried until then. Overlaying it all is a living economy that runs in real time. Shady black markets trade in stolen goods, while above them sits an organized stock exchange with shifting values driven by player action. Instead of one feature taking the spotlight, all these systems combine into an ecosystem that feels alive.
Most indie projects that reach too far almost always end the same way. They start with flashy trailers, bold promises, and mountains of ambition. Then they grind to a halt. The scale swallows them, or the developer burns out, or fans realize half the features don't actually work once the game is finally in their hands. That's the pattern we've seen before, so it's easy to be cautious when something as huge as Beta Decay comes along. But here's the twist. It isn't showing the usual warning signs yet. In fact, the build we've seen so far runs shockingly smooth. And the craziest part? The whole thing sits under a single gigabyte in size. For something that already shows destructible worlds, physics, and AI, that level of optimization is almost unheard of. You can tell the community has noticed. Every time new footage drops, the threads on Reddit light up, Discord servers fill with screenshots and theory crafting, and gamers who normally never agree on anything start saying the same thing. Why does this one actually look legit? It feels less like vague hype and more like excitement backed by something real, which is rare in early stages of a game like this. Sure, it's not playable yet for the wider public, but players are already bookmarking it like they're preparing for a surprise hit. Of course, not everyone is sold. The biggest criticism sounds simple. Can one human being really finish a project this big? Even fans are asking the tough questions. There's a long list of promising games that raised expectations sky high and then crashed before reaching daylight. Just think of how many Kickstarter titles disappeared into silence after collecting money. The history of gaming is filled with reminders that passion alone isn't enough to guarantee success. At the same time, other indie games have made non-believers eat their words. We've seen projects dismissed as too small to matter end up drawing millions of players. Solo-developed hits like Stardew Valley or Undertale became landmarks because one person refused to cut corners. The difference with Beta Decay is the scale. It's not a simple farming sim or a story-driven RPG. It's an ecosystem of survival, physics, economy, and combat systems layered over each other. That scale makes the risks higher, but it also makes the potential payoff massive. And honestly, the previews aren't sticking to promises. They're already showing working features. You can watch AI crew members acting on their own, reacting to problems around them. You can see weather systems shift from calm to storms, whole environments shatter apart under weapons fire. These aren't teaser ideas, they're live, functional parts of the game that suggest the foundation is stronger than skeptics might assume. Then there's multiplayer. Most indie games don't even attempt to get single-player systems stable in the early stages, let alone think about connecting people together. But Beta Decay is already talking about LAN servers, co-op options, and even PvP. That's the kind of detail usually left to major studios years into development. So when people describe Beta Decay as risky, they're not wrong. It could collapse under the weight of its own ambition, but the hype isn't running wild without cause. It's built around footage that shows a game already working beyond the usual smoke and mirrors. And that's why every preview feels harder to ignore than the last.
Beta Decay is a gamble, but that's exactly what makes it fascinating. One developer is building the kind of game most studios wouldn't risk, and that ambition is the pure spirit of indie gaming. It's not about safe choices, it's about trying something bold, even if it might fail. If you're even a little curious, wishlist it, join the community, and follow the updates. Watching this journey unfold feels like being there for the start of something rare. Whether it becomes a masterpiece or fades away, Beta Decay is already proving that one indie title can reshape the conversation. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you support the channel and want to see more content. Till next time.